CFB Paint back again. Week, what is this? Week 10 recap? Is
Yep.
that right? Yeah, okay, week 10. And like Jaws 2 said, just when you thought it was safe to go back into the water, Corey, I think we were kind of on. I feel like we were on this one saying like, look, it looks like a sleepy week, but we don't trust it. And sure enough, you and I were right. Not that many people held serve on Hold Serve Saturday.
Yep.
Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start?
Oh, I have no idea where we go from here. Where do you want to go? Start from the top of number 1, Oregon, and then work our way down the top 25?
Sure. Let's go.
Okay.
That's a great thought process there. Did you get eyes on too much of this game? It was kind of like the one that I would go from quad box to checking out that other one back to my quad box.
Yeah,
So
honestly, Oregon just looked dominant. That second quarter put the game away, and then it was all right, coast for the rest of the game. Oregon is the team to beat in the Big Ten. So who's second? Is it Ohio State? Is it Indiana? We'll find out in 2 weeks, assuming they don't
yeah,
hit anything. So
yeah, and even then, like that still would decide it, right? Because if they won against Ohio State, they'd have the head-to-head despite a loss to Michigan.
they would.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton to say about it. I mean, it looks like we're still waiting word on Tez Johnson's injury. I just heard that was a thing, so that's one to perhaps monitor.
Yeah. Also, I was sitting there saying I am starting to buy the Dylan Gabriel hype a little bit. To be honest, I know you've been like, "Oh, this is a whatever reward," but he's been consistent this entire year, and it's starting to show. And that consistency starting to win me over. So
Yeah, tell you what, you go undefeated, you win the Big Ten championship, and a couple of these others, particularly like Colorado drops off, Miami drops off. All right, you're kind of no one else is giving me something to even counter it, right?
yeah,
Like,
Miami's not going to drop off. Let's be real. And Colorado, now that they control their own destiny, do you expect them to drop off? Absolutely not.
are we certain that they control their own destiny?
They at least have the head-to-head with. They have the head-to-head with Kansas State. They don't have
Out of the way, right?
right.
But I'm saying go down the tiebreakers with Iowa State, assuming everyone wins out, which again is kind of a dangerous assumption. I'm just not sure if they have it or if Ohio State or not Ohio State, excuse me, Iowa State would have the tiebreaker. I can't remember all the criteria that it goes down to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. They don't play each other, so you wouldn't have the head-to-head. Then it would probably go. I think it's the next thing is like common competitors or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
which if it's against common opponents, Iowa State could potentially beat Kansas State in a few weeks, and
but
assuming
Colorado
they both win
plays Tech next week or this week, so
oh yeah, so that could offset it. Okay,
yeah,
interesting. But yeah, that's that one's one that's they're probably not going away. Miami's probably not going away. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm open to it. Not necessarily that I really believe it, but it's just like, well, who else? At some point, you got to pick someone. And it's not like a bunch of people are like throwing their hat in the ring saying, like, hey, I'm going to carry my team to victory every game. I'm not going to have one bad game, not going to cost my team, not going to chuck a boatload of interceptions like Carson Beck. There's so you're right. At some point, we have to just start saying, hey, he doesn't mess up.
Yep.
But at the same time, supporting cast around him, pretty special.
Yeah, but let's say you beat Ohio State or Indiana again in the. Let's say you beat Ohio State again in the Big Ten championship.
Hard to ignore it.
That'd be impressive. Yeah, Indiana. I don't think people are buying Indiana as much. Indiana has to prove it by beating Ohio State to kind of say, "Oh, we are the big team," because they don't have the history behind themselves. But
yeah. They're basically like last year's Ohio State team, where it's like they're beating and crushing a bunch of cans, but they don't have the brand recognition, so you don't get the benefit of like you said, years of history built up, so people trust the brand maybe more than they should, or are just willing to give it the benefit of the doubt more than others. But all right, so Oregon, I didn't have too many other big takeaways from that game. Like, I just like, okay, like I'm trusting Oregon. Like they're one of very few teams that I trust right now.
Yep. Exactly.
So good for them. Number two, oh yeah, we talked about Carson Beck and him just handing out interceptions like it's Halloween and handing out candy. Um, Man, that was a fun game. Did you see much of that game?
All I can say is like I caught a little bit of that one, but all I can say is if DJ Lagway had not gone out of that game, what would have happened?
I mean, like I see that perspective because I don't even remember who the. Gosh, let me open up the
Aiden Warner, the
like
backup.
Aiden Warner. Thank you. Yeah, like I mean, he wasn't good, right? Like that's true, and he did have a pretty bad interception that pretty much sealed the deal
Right.
for Georgia. But he also converted a couple of crazy third down. I was like, oh man, this kid, like I was impressed with him, like for like being like the third string, come off the bench against what's probably widely considered to be one of the best defenses, one of the best defenses in college football. I think Tennessee probably has
Yeah,
something to say
I'd put
about
him up there.
that. But yeah, I thought I was like, man, he's capable. Like 7 of 22 for 66 yards and an interception. Maybe doesn't tell the whole story, is what I'm gonna say. I was pretty impressed with him. Florida, heck of an effort. Yeah, you knew it was going to take a lot to have to win that game, and you got a lot of breaks. You needed to cash in a few more of. I can't remember even what their points off turnovers were, but I think
Yeah,
they only turned those 3 picks into 10 points.
I think that's
I
right.
think
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
so.
Yep. And they have a fumble that Georgia returns or Georgia later turns into a touchdown, so it kind of negates itself. But I mean, you
Yeah,
also had the Georgia fumble in the third quarter that Florida couldn't capitalize either. So
yeah, there were opportunities for Florida. Kind of, you feel for them with the number of injuries. I don't know if there was something with the turf there. It seemed like that game had lots of injuries, just kind of back to back to back. It felt like there was a bunch of players. I think on both sides that kind of at least had to go off for a few plays. But um, man, what's the panic meter on Georgia right now? Are we worried?
I think if you handle business against Ole Miss, no, you're not.
You win that one, and then do you have a mulligan still? Can you go 10-2 and be in the field?
Yeah, you'll
Probably.
go 10-2 and be in the field. You may not be in the SEC championship depending on how things work out. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you beat Ole Miss and you lose to Tennessee, okay, you beat Tennessee, you lose to Ole Miss, and then you beat Tennessee, and Tennessee holds serve for a little while. I still think you're okay. I think this is
I
Georgia
didn't
State.
realize those were back to back.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, and I don't think Georgia Tech poses a real threat unless,
no.
gosh, what's the QB's name? His
Unless
name's
Haynes King plays out of
Haynes
his
King.
mind
Thank
and
you.
Carson Beck hands out candy.
Well,
Like,
is he playing? I don't know if we like. He hasn't played the last couple weeks. I don't expect him to play this week.
yeah,
So I don't know if he's going to come back for that game or not. If there's been any announcement on his status, kind of for the rest of the season, but yeah, I think that it maybe is a 2 game season, and you need one of them for if you're Georgia for the to be in contention. But let's see, Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Texas, LSU, all with one loss. So
yeah,
lots to shake out still.
it's crowded up.
Georgia and Tennessee play each other. Texas A&M and Texas play each other. LSU plays Alabama, who already has 2 losses. So there's potential for LSU to kind of be knocked down a peg if Bama wins. I think the SEC's logjam at the top is probably the easiest to clear up. I think.
But as long as you get 2 teams with 1 loss at the end, that unless if you start getting teams with multiple losses, like let's say Georgia drops one of these to Ole Miss or Tennessee, and then let's say Tennessee or Ole Miss lose a game, and then Texas might loses to A&M. Like it could get nuts if you have the wrong teams pull upsets. And
Yeah.
this year, I mean, Vandy has owned Alabama, the state of Alabama. Okay, what's going on there? South Carolina, what team's going to show up there? And then Kentucky will play a game, but then all of a sudden lay an egg at the end, unless they decide to finish a game randomly. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think it's a lot like most of these other conferences where every team has a shot any given Sunday, unless you're Florida State
Yeah.
or Saturday.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Georgia. It looks like they maybe have the cleanest path there. I think. A quick glance, but yeah.
I would
I don't
argue
know.
Texas. has the cleanest path there.
Oh, yep. I
Because
think I overlooked
you
that
play
one.
A&M,
A&M is your only one
you play
on
Florida,
the
and
road.
is it this week? And Florida might have DJ. They might have a third string quarterback. I think the line is like 20 something points.
And you're at home,
Yeah.
so it's just
So I think Texas has the easiest way. It's just a matter of the fact that they have a loss head to head with Georgia, where if another one loss team gets in and Georgia gets in, who knows? We might go to the random draw part for SEC.
I'm just dying for that. Just give me a coin flip on who plays, and just everyone's like, okay. I think that people would start to wake up and be like, okay, all right, okay, the conferences are too big. We got to do something about it.
Yep, that's gonna happen. I mean, we're gonna have crazy tiebreakers this year. We kind of talked about the Big 12 last year as an issue, and this year we've got to talk about every single conference, and it's gonna be an issue where until they go back to divisions or something like that. So
yeah.
All right, move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
The game of the week: Ohio
The
State,
big
Penn
game
State.
of the week. Yeah.
What
What'd
do
you
you think?
think? Oh, okay. I'll go first.
Yeah.
Man, I like my heart goes out to Penn State fans, and I don't like Penn State. Like I'm cards on the table. I hate Penn State. I just don't like them at all. Um, but how frustrating does it have to be? Just like year in and year out, have field a good team, sometimes even a great team, and just like never once be able to get over the hump against Ohio State. It's gotta be just so maddening. I just can't. I just don't know what I would do because like other teams have sprung, like hell, Purdue sprung up a few years ago and beat Ohio State, and you just can never do it. And part of it's like, all right, well, we're never sneaking up on them like a Purdue might, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're gonna have our full attention, or we're gonna have their full attention every time we play. Man, I would be very frustrated. The things that really jumped out at me were, yeah, you started off the game really well, um, and I mean, 2 trips to the red zone, 0 points is brutal. 2 trips to the goal line, 0 points. And it's just like, okay, can we vary up the play? Like, it was just funny. Like, the way I saw, I think both of those, but particularly the final, the one with what, like 2 minutes left or something, like, where it's like, all right, we're either going to score and then maybe have to try and prevent a last second drive by Ohio State, or the game is essentially over unless we get some miracle very quick stop. But that just like run right at the middle, run right at the middle, run right at the middle, and then we get this crazy weird play. Like I was like, okay, the play calling is too bland, and then we like way overcorrect into like, okay, we got way too wild with this.
Well, and the play call was all on like a third of the field. Everybody was on one side of the field. There was nothing on the other side, which is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would be very frustrated if I was a Penn State fan, but also maybe that's just like, hey, that's the James Franklin experience, right? We know what it is. We've had it for what, 10 years now?
Yeah, 11, I think.
Okay, so maybe they're just numb to it and calloused, but that game, both of those red zone trips, just so frustrating. And I don't blame them, like going for it on four. Like they did the right. The choices were correct. The play calls I thought were a little uninspired. And yeah, getting Warren, what's his first name?
Exactly.
Tyler Warren. Getting him involved, like man, like he only got a few targets, but he made some plays on the day where it's like, all right, cool. Like have him line up. I would love to. Yeah, when you said like, hey, I'm no schematics expert, but like, can you line up in the goal line and then like motion him out so it's him one-on-one versus a backer, and I just get to throw it up to have my big body tight end go make a play, my best player.
You showed Wildcat with him in the backfield a few times this year. I would have leveraged that and maybe had him pass the ball or something like that. Like everybody would have been keyed in on, he's in the backfield, he's going to find a way to run it. But he's passed for a touchdown this year already. Like,
yeah, would have liked to have seen something involving him.
I'll tell you my thought process regarding this game. So this weekend I watched the Netflix series The Comeback about the Red Sox coming back against the Yankees in that second game.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things they talk about is that the Yankees had a winning mentality. They didn't used to winning. They had a culture of winning, and the Red Sox did not. They wanted to. They could win games, but they didn't have that killer instinct. I'm going to go win a championship. I'm going to compete with the Yankees. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make there. And that screams Penn State to me. You are 1-10 in the last 11 games against Ohio State. You have had double-digit leads in 7 of those 10 losses.
Woof.
There is a reason that this team does not beat teams 50 to 7, does not beat teams 48 to 10. They've been beating teams 35, 14, 32, 20. Like, I'm throwing out random numbers. But that is what Ohio State does. Ohio State beats teams, for the most part, they haven't as much this year, with a killer instinct. And
yeah, they grind them into powder.
And Penn State does not have that killer instinct. They are the Red Sox right now. And until they decide to spend the money like the Red Sox did and decide to, I'm going to get that killer instinct, I'm going to find a way to win, I'm going to be a bad A, they're going to continue to lose these games that are important. And it's ridiculous. But it might be what James Franklin is. Let's be frank.
Let's be frank. Lynn.
Let's be Franklin. I don't want to be Franklin. Yeah.
No, I mean, well said. I just would be so frustrated for them. But at the same time, part of me is like, and I was kind of pulling for them just because, you know, Florida State's terrible. And, you know, like, so it's like, I just kind of want everyone to be miserable. So, so it's like, all right, if Ohio State takes 2 losses, I'd be okay with that. But
I want Penn State to get over the hump. I've wanted them to get over the hump. I was rooting hard for them. But I mean, like you said, you have 2 drives in the red zone where you come up with 0 points. I think you have 2 field goals on the offensive side of the ball. Like, that's an issue. You're very fortunate this game wasn't, you know, completely blown out of proportion.
It could have been worse, yeah.
Yeah, you punched a ball out randomly at the 1 yard line that rolled in for a touchback. Like, very fortunate.
Yeah.
But this Penn State team, I don't know. That's the conundrum here is this is what you're going to be, I think, with James Franklin. Now, are you okay with that? Or do you finally say, you know what, we're not okay with that. We're going to upgrade.
Yeah, and okay, so I've seen stuff like this, you know, like we've mentioned on here, like we listen to Cover 3, we listen to a couple of other people, some pundits and whatnot, and the one that I have just never understood, and I kind of like Penn State, like they do have a higher ceiling than this. We know this, like this is true. They've won national championships, so like I understand the landscape has changed, right, with the NIL and stuff. It's not like they're short on alumni, right? Like it's just like they've got plenty. So if they really want to open up the, you know, loosen up the purse strings and play big boy football, they can do that. It's just, I mean, James Franklin's James Franklin, right? Like at this point, this is what he is until he proves otherwise. Like, and yeah, there's other like national pundits that kind of, I think, sort of are maybe what I would consider to be a little too soft on James Franklin, because at some point you got to win those games. Penn State, I think, should have national championship expectations.
He's like 3-17 against top 10 opponents in his career.
Yeah, that's. I mean, at some point you just got to win them, right? Like at some point it's a results business, and the results at Penn State have been good, but not great for a long time. And I'm not saying they have to be perennial contenders, but this is one that you should say, okay, every 7 to 10 years, we should make a very serious run at a national championship. If we don't have that, we not reevaluate what's going on.
So the other thing that's kind of interesting is you have the talks back in the last 2-3 years about Ryan Day. If Ryan Day can't beat Michigan, if Ryan Day can't do this, do we fire him so that we can find somebody that can? Like, that's a winning mentality. Like, they decided if
good point.
The Red Sox were the same way. They get to the in 03, they get to the ACLS or whatever it is against the Yankees, and they lose in 7, and they go and fire their manager, and they're like, we need someone that's going to really take this seriously, and they go and get somebody like Terry Francona to win. Like, you might have to do something that's just pushes you over the top just a little bit.
Well said. We'll leave it at that. Man, we were pretty close to getting the Manny Diaz revenge game. Like, did you catch any of Duke and Miami?
I caught a lot of that game, and I wouldn't say we were close. Like, Duke was in it, and they were there, and then they weren't. And Miami went, okay, forget this. shut the door. And so that's the thing about Duke or Miami. You have to keep them down. You have to continue to beat them. I think at one point in time, Duke was up 28-17, and they needed to continue to put them in the ground. But Miami just said, "All right, we're going to play our game and turn it on." I mean, you scored 36 points in the second half.
Yeah. I mean, they were aided by, 4 Duke turnovers.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt like that was, and some of those were pretty ill-advised. So, like, I don't know. Like, that was one where I felt like they had the right game plan. They played super well through essentially 3 full quarters. Ended up being forced to kick a field goal early in the fourth, and Miami is keenly aware of what the number is against them, and if they can cover it, they do. Like they they're all about that. I think the other thing that Cristobal just needed to kind of bury and kind of put to bed was like if Manny Diaz, the former Miami coach, came back and beat them with the Duke Blue Devils, you could build up a lot of goodwill with a 9-0 start. You could lose a lot of it by losing that game to Duke and the former coach. So hat tip to the Hurricanes for getting it done, showing resolve in the second half after, Duke, took a big punch. They were up. Miami was up 14-0, and it just kind of looked like, all right, this is not going to be close. And then Duke scores a touchdown, gets a stop, scores another touchdown. Miami scores a field goal. Duke scores a touchdown. Like, they're leading heading into the half, and then they score to open the second half to go up 2 scores, and it's like you could hear the crowd get antsy. Like, they're just like, are we about to do this again? Are we going to lose to Duke at home twice in a row?
It felt a little bit like the Cal game where Cam just like, all right, I'm gonna flip the switch and play, and he has a next level that he can reach. I don't know why he doesn't always reach it, but it feels like that. So.
Yeah, it's almost like what is it, Rocky 3, where he's like, he's getting killed out there. He's like, no, he's getting mad. Like,
I have never seen a Rocky movie.
What?
There you go.
Oh man. Okay. Well, don't look. Like, how there's like those YouTube videos where like an expert in a certain field will break down scenes of that field in like film. Like where they'll have like an archery expert break down like little clips from like from Rambo and from
Hunger Games, etc. Yeah.
Hunger Games. Thank you. I was like, I kept wanting to say Katniss, but I was like, I know that's the character. That's not the name of the movie. Well, yeah, like if you were to watch like some boxing guy break down those, he'd probably be like, yeah, this is absolute trash in terms of the actual boxing that's displayed on screen. What we watch these movies for is for the one motivation to exercise. The training montages are excellent. They're quotable as can be. Like I just said, I quoted that one where he's like, he goes out there and he's like taking shots to the face like a bunch. I think it's Rocky 3. I'm gonna take it in the comments for not knowing, but he's like going out there and he's just taking punches and he's like, he's getting killed out there. This is the people in his corner, and the other guy's like, no, he's getting mad. Like, he's getting ready to, like, it's absurd, I know, but you can't help but love it.
But that is what Cam Ward's doing, essentially.
Yeah, it feels like it sometimes where it's like he's either bored or just like, all right, and then it's like, okay, time to get down to business, and then he flips the switch. We've seen him do it in the Cal game. We've seen him do it in this game. Again, also with Virginia Tech, there's a number of times where they've had to sort of pull it out of the fire, and he's always ready to do it. So, but at the same time, like I kind of like I question like how much credit do you get like from and sorry, I'm gonna connect the dots because I did it in my head and didn't articulate it to you, but like it's great. He's really a talented player. Where I went in my head was like, is that Heisman worthy? And then I started to articulate the counter argument to you, where it's like, I don't think it's that Heisman worthy because you're kind of part of the problem when it comes to you've dug yourself into these holes by not being productive, and then you have to like sort of Herculean effort your way back out of it. Reminds me kind of Jameis Winston in 2014, post Heisman, where it's like, all right, we dig this terrible hole. Now I'm great, and so when I want to be great, we can do these remarkable comebacks. But I don't know if he should get a whole lot of credit for that because he's part of the problem. He's part of the reason they have to do that. But I digress. Miami looks well on their way to going 12-0. Do we agree on that?
Yeah, they're definitely making the ACC title game, probably against SMU. So
Yeah, looks like they're on a crash course now. I guess we probably don't need to jump right to Clemson, but we'll get there in a
Yeah, let's
minute.
do it.
You want to do it
No, I'm
now?
saying let's go on with Tennessee.
All right, yeah. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Tennessee, good defense, great defense. Okay on offense. Like,
The offense eventually shows up in their second half games to win the games. So
yeah, the question for me, like, a lot of that again was you're benefited by a team that has to play Gavin Wimsatt at quarterback for the second half, so that was a nice little favor for the Tennessee Volunteers. Um, I don't know. I mean, they play at Georgia. I'm gonna say I think Georgia wins that game,
I think
but
it would too.
it's just like if they run up against a team that has a competent run defense that can defend the run consistently for 4 quarters, like Tennessee's not going to run away from you. Like
Yeah,
you're going to be in that game.
Nico's not going to be able to beat you single handedly. I agree.
Yeah,
Oh,
it may just be another year for
he may
him.
not be able to put you to bed.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's kind of what we're saying. Like maybe I was a year early on the hype there. But I also think they could use some help at receiver. I don't think their receivers are. I mean, I think one, some of them have been injured, but two, none of them is just like, oh man, I'm dying to have that guy on FSU or on one of the teams I root for, right?
I
So
think that wraps it up.
what?
I think that wraps up that Tennessee team.
Okay, yeah, cool. All right, so the next one that, man, it just felt like too cliche to call for South Carolina. Although credit to you, you did. I was just like, man, it has all of the ingredients of a South Carolina like upset or at least a close game. And
It
I thought
wasn't.
that was well, I thought that was enough. Well, yeah, it wasn't. But I just thought that was enough to have A&M's attention and be like, all right, we really got to lock in this week. We got to make sure that we're on our P's and Q's. Man, South Carolina played a heck of a game. And there was that brief moment in the second quarter where there's this nice little spurt and this little flurry by Texas A&M where they get a couple stops, they score a few touchdowns, and me watching, I drafted A&M on my win totals team, both for the podcast, but also with my in-laws. So I had a vested interest in A&M winning this game. I was kind of like, okay, they've settled down, they're starting to figure it out a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty clear to me that A&M. I mean, they didn't ever turn to Wigman, and Marcel Reed. Like he's a super dynamic athlete. He's not a super physical runner, so like the 4th and 1s that they got stopped on, it was interesting that they went for two, didn't make them, and then went and on a third, 4th and short, decided to punt and said, you know what, I, I don't think we're going to make this. And you think that I don't know, especially with like some of those, they didn't even really make it where like there was a QB run option off those plays, or it didn't look like it. It looked like it was just like a straight dive. So it was a little bit of an easy read for the South Carolina defense. And you think that at some point they'd say like, okay, well maybe we do something where we're going sort of toward the edge. I understand like it's 1 yard, just run right forward and get it. But with the injury to Le'Veon Moss, running a backup running back, maybe you utilize some of that speed that you have in the backfield with Marcel Reed to maybe get the defense moving laterally and then find that yard to cut up and sneak in and get that extra yard. I don't know. Like South Carolina is this really funny team, and I do think they've gotten better, but like it still sticks in my mind that they only beat who was it, Holy Cross or the Citadel? I can't remember by like 4 points in the first week of the season.
This team is up and down, like we've said, and they're a few points away from being the leaders in the SEC. To be honest, I think it's like 10.
Sorry, it was Old Dominion. Excuse me.
You're right. That's what
Old Dominion. But yes, keep going.
Yeah, they're a few points away from being one of the leaders in the SEC, and they just somehow have 3 losses in the SEC. Like, I mean, there's a reason I'm not picking the Vanderbilt game this week. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
Boy,
favored to win the game, but
I could see any result in that game. I could see Vandy winning by 10 plus. I could see South Carolina winning by 28, and then just about anything in between.
yep.
Um, yeah, Shane Beamer is an interesting, like, he's just an interesting coach where it's like he feels very Dabo esque, and I know that the South Carolina fans would probably hate to hear that, but just like he's maybe not the tactician that other coaches are. He's a super vibes guy, like recruiting. That's what he does really well. Um, I don't know. Like it's just interesting to see how far he's been able to take that program. 5-3, they're probably going to go to a bowl. I think between the Vanderbilt and Missouri game, and heck, even at Clemson, like that's you're going to win one of those three,
I
and then
think
you have
so.
Wofford, which I think is although Old Dominion would have something to say that maybe not, but I'm confident that they beat Wofford, so I think they're going bowling. Um, and they got a lot of like young pieces that are kind of exciting. Like they had one of the best offensive line classes this past recruiting class. They're true freshmen this year. I think only one or two of them has really seen the field, and maybe not in large stretches. But Lenore Sells is what, a true sophomore.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Nick Harbor is a true sophomore. He still needs to round into form a little bit, but man, is he just physically super impressive. Um, they got some pieces. They're exciting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. We talked about whether they should let him go at some point in time, and we both said, nope, hold on to him for as long as you can have him because he's the best USC's going to get.
Yeah, that's okay. I thought I remembered that. I didn't want to give us too much credit for that, but I was like, like they're closer than they are far away. Like the fact that he was winning on the trail with some and winning. I think he exceeded his win totals expectations for his first two seasons as coach. I think this is his fourth year, and last year was the first time he fell beneath their win
Yeah.
totals. And this year it looks like they're going to exceed it yet again. And again, I think that they're ascending. I don't know. We'll see how high they can ascend, but they got some good pieces on that roster.
But they will need.
We said all that without even saying Dylan Stewart. What's his name? Gosh, the defensive end, true freshman,
Oh,
playing
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I'm thinking running. I
But
was going in my head to the running back. Wow, what's his name?
a younger player or
No,
Rock
he ran
Sanders?
for like 171
Yeah,
yards this week.
yeah, Raheem Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, there you go, Rocket. Like,
Yeah,
it's just a matter of. I don't know what was Rocket a senior this year.
yeah, I think so. He's a transfer from Arkansas.
That's what I was thinking. You need somebody to make sure you can replace him to make your team as balanced as you can for next year. But that's the only hole I potentially see in that team
Yeah,
from an offensive perspective.
yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Gamecock fan. I think for sure. Even like you said, a couple plays here and there from beating LSU and beating Bama, and then the season looks really different. Like if you get both of those.
Yep.
Okay. Like I don't know. That covers kind of the main ones. I can rapid fire through a few others. I don't know. Like I guess we didn't go through.
Yeah, we need
All
Texas
right.
Tech and Louisville real quick for sure.
Okay. Texas Tech. I caught this. I think the second half of this Texas Tech Iowa State game. Number one, weather. I'm not a weather guy. But like it seemed like everything in the Midwest, from like basically from the border of Canada all the way down to like McAllen, Texas, apparently just had rain coming. You saw like some crazy rain in games in Houston, in lots of delays. There was the delay in the Oklahoma State Arizona State game. This game was really sloshy. Like the conditions, the field conditions. You saw players like having trouble, navigating the wet field. Um, and so, yeah, I think the game played out differently than I expected. Very fun to see the back and forth exchange in the last couple of drives between Texas Tech, who I felt like most of the game, I think, was kind of outplaying them. I'd have to double check. I loved like the stats of war, like did we really get beat this bad tweets.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating. Again, it's one data point. Like it takes out turnovers and explosive plays. So like there's some things where it's like okay, it doesn't fully factor into these things that really drive it. But again, there's pretty good disclaimers on his tweets. But I can't remember where this one sat in that but it felt like, from my view, that Texas Tech was moving the football a little bit better, and then there were two drives at the end that Iowa State really kind of kicked it into gear. A touchdown, I think, right toward the end of the second quarter, and then the late touchdown to take the lead, where yeah, you see just like the seesaws in the win probability. It goes from, with 1 minute and 26 seconds left in the first half, ISU is only at a 54% win probability. They score a touchdown, they jump almost to 80%. And then the second half, like, the win probability sits pretty heavily on Texas Tech most of the time. They score a touchdown, and it goes from what, 71% win probability for Texas Tech all the way to 92% for Iowa State, and then jumps right back with the very late touchdown from Texas Tech to win the game. And yeah, that was a fun game, and it was kind of one where I felt like, I don't know if you saw, there was a fourth down attempt. Gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong. Let me look at just the play.
4th and 7.
Is that where they turn it over on downs?
Oh, no.
They turn it over on down. Here it is. It's a 4th and 6 at the Iowa State 44, and they go for it. And this is with like 8.5 minutes left. 8.5 minutes left. They're up by 1. Texas Tech is up by 1. They go for it, kind of again on the plus side of the field, but only 6 yards, like right near midfield. And they go for it to try and, if you can extend the lead there, a touchdown and an extra point makes it an 8-point game. You're up by 1, and 4th and 6, play is broken up, right? Like the Iowa State defense has everyone covered. Baron Morton is under duress, and he scrambles like 3 or 4 different times and finally gets free, and someone comes open and he just overthrows him. He's trying to throw back. He's like rolling left. Did you see the play?
No, I saw the replay of it though.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like he's scrambling left, and then starts to throw kind of right. He's a right-handed guy, so he's kind of, there's not a whole lot behind the throw, but he ends up actually overcompensating in the arm, and he just puts it over the top of it. I forget who the receiver was, but just, he's gonna catch it. That's a first down, and I think he had a fair amount of space.
Yeah.
So like, I was kind of glad to see that not come back to haunt them, because I thought they made the right call of being aggressive there, not trying to, play the field position game on a 1-point lead. The next possession, Iowa State only moves the ball 23 yards and then misses a field goal, and then you have a punt from Texas Tech, and then they trade touchdowns to end the game. But yeah, Texas Tech, I love Joey McGuire. I've been on this, like, I'm a fanboy of them. Felt like this year was kind of a year that they could do some things. I know they've had a couple of disappointing games. The Washington State game was particularly surprising, to be kind of run out of the stadium like they were. John Mateer is he's pretty fun player to watch in his own right. But I think that there's a lot to kind of just still fight for with Texas Tech. I mean, I think you can still sell that the dream is alive. They have, let's see, who are their conference losses to? They're to Baylor and TCU. So like, you're not competing with them. You still, I guess, you don't play Kansas State. You play Colorado, so you can bring another one down to your level this week, right? You can say, like, okay, we can bring them down, and we have the head-to-head there. We have the head-to-head with Cincinnati, and the head-to-head with Arizona State. So of the 2 lost teams, they're kind of in a pretty good position outside of Kansas State, potentially. But again, they didn't play them. I would go down to a tiebreaker scenario. But I think Texas Tech is one to watch down the stretch here. They're home against Colorado. If this was a night game, I'd be much more worried for Colorado. It's a 2 p.m. Oh, is it 2 p.m. local? Maybe 3 p.m. local kick. But like, it maybe gets dark in the second half in that game. But like, I just don't think it'll be the crazy environment. But lots of teams have traveled out to Lubbock and had their dreams crushed. So Colorado needs to be on their P's and Q's, but Colorado's coming off a bye, an extra week to prepare. But yeah, Iowa State, that's a disappointing effort at home. I think, like, just one that you would like to see. I feel like the last couple of weeks they've shown some weakness. I'm curious to see how they get up off the mat. I don't know. Like, who are you projecting in the Big 12 at this point? Is it BYU?
Yeah, I
Are
think
we
you
gonna say that?
go BYU. I mean, there's a chance that they lose to Utah. Utah's got a great defense. And it's going to be a night game up in Salt Lake. Anybody could beat anybody in this conference. So I have no idea. I think in my head I lean towards you still probably have Iowa State and BYU, but we'll see. I mean, that's my thought process at least. My takeaway from this game and from the last few weeks are in the Big 12 is don't score too early. We saw this with in this game. Iowa State scores really and leaves too much time on the clock for Texas Tech to go back. We saw it against in the Baylor game this week against TCU.
Yeah, with
TCU
TCU,
ties
yeah.
and leaves too much. We saw it last week when Iowa State drives the field and wins 38-35 against UCF, or that was 2 weeks ago. Saw it again with BYU against I can't even remember off the top of my head.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah, don't leave too much time on the clock, especially in these one possession games. Even with Colorado and the Hail Mary, you leave too much time on the clock. These Big 12 teams are going to get you in the end. So
I kind of like that. It's like sometimes it boils down who has the ball last.
Yep,
who's gonna win. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like obviously, in my opinion, like of course you don't want to score too fast, but it's hard to be like, oh man, we someone's streaking toward the end zone. Like I'm not telling them to stop.
No,
like,
and that was the thing.
You need
I
the
was watching
points,
that play, and I think it's a 30. He busts a 35-yard, 40-yard run. I'm trying to pull it up real quick.
I just moved away from it.
Yeah, here I'll pull it up real quick. Oh, he busts a 44-yard run, and I'm watching it, and I look down at the timeouts, and I think at the time Texas Tech has 2 timeouts, and I'm like, ooh, do I put myself down at the 10 or the 5 and make you burn those timeouts to whittle the clock down and kick a field goal and go up? I know you needed a touchdown at the time.
You needed a touchdown,
so
yeah.
Maybe you had to put yourself in the end zone. Yeah, I don't know. But that's the thing is if you score too quickly and it ends up biting you in the butt in this league.
For sure. I don't know. I think, and we touched on it last week, I think a little bit, but I think we really have to start talking about Colorado as a contender in this league. I'm telling you, as a BYU fan, I want no part of Colorado in a Big 12 championship game.
Absolutely not.
They've got athletes that no one else
against, because you have Kansas State loses. That's your head-to-head. So now you're only one loss team, and they are 2 loss teams, so you don't have to worry about them. And Iowa State loses, which brings them to your level to some degree. If I'm Colorado, I am not dropping another game because I know I have a lot to play for now.
Yeah, and Prime's going to look like a prophet if they make the playoff after everyone ridiculed them. And I will put myself oh, playoff, okay, come on, man. I was one of them doubters. Right now, it's I'm telling you, put them against Iowa State, put them against BYU, put them against Kansas State. Man, I don't think they're losing any of those teams right now. I know that they lost at home to Kansas State. I understand that. So that one, they'll all be close games, but Colorado has some athletes on that team that I don't think anyone else in the Big 12 has. No one else has a Travis Hunter. No one else has a LeJontay Wester. No one else has a Shedeur. There's problems there, and you're gonna have to keep up. And Colorado's playing better defense, not great defense, but better defense. Yeah. So I don't know. That's just it's fascinating. Seeing how those tiebreakers will play out. And again, as a BYU fan / alum, Big Red Raiders guns up this weekend. If you can take Colorado out of the mix, I very much like my chances with Kansas State in a rematch or Iowa State than I do against Colorado. I think Colorado, if you get them in that game, get them in that Big 12 championship game, and I just don't see a way that they lose it, right?
The inner Sanders is going to come out of Prime and Shedeur. And it's just you're in a big game.
Elevate. Yeah. Elevate. Exactly. So. I agree. Let's see.
Louisville.
Anything else we want to cover? Louisville. Oh, yes.
Like we said, we were saying if you survive, you advance. Georgia managed to survive. We had a few teams that Ohio State
Yeah,
managed to survive.
Tennessee. Yeah.
Tennessee managed to survive. Iowa State, Clemson, A&M did not. And honestly, this Clemson game is such an interesting like dynamic to me because if you go look at the box scores on this game, I cannot you cannot find how this team Clemson lost. Clemson has 450 yards. They're 11 for 23 on third down, but they're 5 for 6 on fourth down. So you're talking about a total conversion, and this is something that got brought up in a BYU game a few weeks ago, which I kind of like. It's like a total conversion process. Like if you don't convert on third down, do you convert on fourth down? Because you're converting either way. So they convert on 16 of their 23 opportunities, essentially. So you only have seven times where they don't. They run for 450 yards. They turn the ball over. I think, is there one turnover? No, I don't even know if they turn the ball over.
No turnovers.
No turnovers. Like, they move the ball. And if you look at Louisville converts only 33% of their third downs. They don't move the ball very much. But if you go to the actual game, the issue is 2 blocked field goals, 2 recovered onside kicks, and Louisville finished drives when they got down. If you look at the drives summary of Louisville, it's like 10 drives for 70 yards, touchdown, 3 plays for 3 yards, punt, 10 drives. Anytime they get down there, they are scoring, and they're scoring touchdowns. And if you look at Clemson, it's like 10 plays, 58 yards, missed field goal, 10 plays, 58 yards, field goal. Like, and they were not finishing and capitalizing on it like Louisville did. And that was the difference here of being able to finish. And Louisville was able to finish, and Clemson wasn't, and that's why they lost this game, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I only got like a passing view at it, so I saw like kind of toward the end where Clemson put the lipstick on the pig with a couple of touchdowns late that really didn't have a whole lot of.
Well, to be frank, it was the same thing that they'd done all game. They just hadn't been able to finish. Louisville blocks 2 field goals, and then they can't get in the end zone. Like, Clemson could not get in the end zone except for the first quarter until the fourth quarter. Like, you moved the ball fine, you just could not finish. And Louisville finished every chance they got they got rolling. If they weren't 3 and out, they were scoring.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know, it's fun. I think having oh my gosh, what's his name? Jeff Brom. Jeff, that his first name. I keep wanting to say Brian. I know that's his brother. Having Jeff Brom in the ACC he's fun. He makes for good matchups. Again, this was a fun one to watch with Louisville. Like, he's an offensive guy. They got what they needed on offense. Played a banger of a game against Miami. There are some of those things that I like. I'm starting to kind of mourn the loss of in college football, where it's like, okay, like this great coach is at like rival A, and this great coach is at rival B, and they're like locked in like a 10-year battle for supremacy. Like, when Harbaugh first got signed at Michigan, I was like, oh, we got Harbaugh and Urban Meyer for the next 15 years, and it's going to be awesome. And then that really never materialized because Urban was gone pretty quickly. I don't know. I think Brom is one of those guys that it should be a fixture at Louisville. If they can keep him for a good long while, I'm on board, right? Like, yeah. And that's as a fan of a team that would probably benefit from him not being there that long, right?
Like USC, I don't know if you can get better than Brom. He's a Louisville guy through and through, and he's a pretty good recruiter. He's gotten the people to pony up on the NIL scene. How much better can you get than Brom that wants to go to Louisville? I don't know.
I'm right there with you. Any other results you want to tackle?
Just the SMU blows out Pittsburgh. Let's just mention that. Like, yeah, did we see that coming? I don't think we did. A defense that dominated Syracuse couldn't stop anything against SMU, and SMU puts themselves firmly in control of their destiny and saying, we're going to be part of the ACC. One of the things that's crazy is when they came in the ACC, they're like, oh, we're going to win the championship. These guys all suck. Everybody kind of laughed at that. I know I kind of laughed at that, and SMU looks like they're backing up their mouths right there. Like, it's impressive. So
yeah, to borrow a quote from Conor McGregor, we didn't come here to take part. We came here to take over.
Yep.
Man, gangster move, by the way, just saying like, hey, we'll join the conference for free. and we just get our foot in the door, and then we'll kick down the door while we're at it. Don't mind us. No, that's a huge one. I didn't see too much of that game. By the time I even saw the score, I was like, okay, I'll catch up on that game at some point, but it's probably not priority viewing because it already looks like it's out of hand. But they're rolling, and that again sets up, like you said, SMU and Miami potentially in an ACC championship game, which is again another storylines game for those of us that are big on that. Rhett Lashley, a ton of former Hurricanes on that roster that would be motivated as hell to beat Miami. So I make that happen. Still, I'd be excited to see that.
Although Rhett Lashley didn't leave on bad terms, right? He was Mario Cristobal's offensive coordinator and just left to be the head coach of SMU. So
he was Manny Diaz.
Oh, was he Manny Diaz?
He didn't leave on bad terms, but he also wasn't offered the job.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because he was the first year of Van Dyke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The final 6 games where Tyler Van Dyke looked like a dragon slayer with Rhett Lashley, and never really recovered that form. But yeah, has had a really good run at SMU. Obviously, they won the American Conference Championship last year, and in year one in the ACC are going full tilt into.
Does this tell you how terrible the ACC really is?
It could be a referendum on the ACC as well. That's a good point.
I think it is, to be honest. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty meh. Outside of Miami, SMU again, it's having a great year. Lost to a BYU team that, again, in retrospect, now those teams are both ranked in the top 13. Kind of funny to see that game that barely made a wave on the national radar is now that's an important game.
Well, and BYU's defense won that game for them. BYU's offense was terrible in that game. So
yeah, that was kind of Retzloff still is liable to throw 1 or 2 passes a game that's with the right defensive back there, that ball is caught by the wrong team. And so I think that was kind of early days of him. And honestly, SMU, I think, turned the ball over 3 times when they were about to score against BYU, I think.
And this is before they switched to over I think they switched over quarterbacks in this game.
Preston Stone, I think, had 2 drives, if I remember correctly. So I think they were kind of in that process, but BYU was able to kind of just not respect his legs and really get after him in the pass rush, and they had the advantage of their defensive ends, which I don't think super highly of BYU's defensive ends, but they were all over the place early on in that game, so that they had to go to Kevin Jennings, and it turned out to be the right move for SMU going forward. Another one I just wanted to call out. Sorry, I wore the hat. The Huskies getting the job done. Well done, and keeping it under 55.5 points with 2 goal line stands in the 4th quarter, playing like a bunch of men. Way to go, guys. Great effort. Had to call it out. They're not a great team. They're a gritty team. I think Jed Fish is going to be, he's going to get things rolling there. He's a good recruiter. He's a good offensive mind. He's a good motivator of his teams always show up to play. And I think that, this is a little bit of a setback from last year, of course. You knew that was coming, but I think there are brighter days in Seattle for the Huskies. We've gone 54 minutes. Do we want to do anything else?
No, let's call it.
Okay. Well, we haven't done parting shots in forever. I have at least one. We're going to get this across the goal line like the Nittany Lions never could. We're going to wrap this thing up. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will see you on the Week 11 preview podcast later this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.